Hi guys, my name is Julia and I am presenting on Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa, um, chapter 4. Um, I was I struggled with chapter 4. Um, there was a lot of stuff I didn't understand and I had to reread it quite a few times, um, and do a little research to kind of decipher what I was reading. But overall, um, I think chapter 4, Anzaldúa is really looking into the dichotomy of life and identity. There is a lot of contrast in it, which we'll get into. And uh, there's a lot of feminism in it as well, in my opinion. How a patriarchal society is kind of even went as far as manipulating religion and philosophies and goddesses to elevate males and male deities in society and culture. Um, the first thing, though, that I really would like to point out, and I think it's just interesting. I'm not quite sure um, overall what the connection is throughout the chapter. I have maybe a theory or two, but she starts the chapter off talking about when her father died, how her mom went and put sheets over all the mirrors. And that she most likely did this because she was concerned that her children might see a glimpse of their father in the world that they see in the mirror. And she was concerned that her children might follow their dad into the spirit world and become trapped there. And I've seen in movies and shows and stuff when someone dies, stuff put over mirrors. I never understood why, and I think it's interesting, and I'm wondering if that's why it's done and if that's why other cultures are doing it as well. I mean, I know mirrors always seem to have like a spiritual connection. I know there's plenty of horror movies out there about mirrors, and you always seem to see the monster in the mirror in a movie. It's kind of interesting. I believe since this is so much about the duality um, of identity, that possibly a mirror could represent, when you're looking in it, you're seeing your other you. I mean, even in the book, there's a certain part. I wasn't prepared to bring this up, so I don't have the exact page number, but she talks about she looks up and she looks in the mirror and she sees her real face. She sees the face her mother and sister see. She sees all of her different faces. And you see a lot of repetition with the mirror throughout this chapter, and I think that that's really just representative of seeing all the different yous and your identity. So I thought that was really interesting. Of course, a huge part of the chapter is about all the Mesoamerican goddesses and how they were given these monstrous characteristics, these just evil, characteristics turned into these scary stories, if you will. Um, and in the Aztec culture. And it kind of like dethroned them from their seat of worship and made them, something to be scared of so they could be replaced by male deities. And I feel like in religions, all religions, the female is always made to be evil. Think of Eve in the Garden of Eden. Um, of course, she was the one that gave in to temptation. And then she turned around and she tempted Adam. And we in the Christian religion are, you know, it's your fault you have a period because Eve, you have to bear children because of Eve. And I think women have just constantly been held back and vilified in history by men, especially in religion. Um, we're the temptress, we're the evil. Men must protect us even from ourselves. And I think that Anzaldua really makes that a prominent part of this chapter. Like I said, it's very much, the chapter is really much about dichotomy of life and identity. For instance, on page 65, I quote, she says, she has this fear that she has no names, that she has many names. A contrast there. And all throughout it, there is just so much contrast and doubles. Um, on page 69, she talks about how Colloquy, I hope I said that right, she depicts contradictory, that she's like Medusa, and she represents all these different doubles and contrasts in a dichotomy. She's the eagle and the serpent. She's heaven and the underworld. All that on page 69 is just really going back to solidify that this chapter is very much about dichotomy of life and identity. Um, she um, she then goes on and she talks about how Chicanos and mestizos, they use things to distract themselves from feeling like outcasts. They like popping pills and drinking, um, and how when they don't rise up out of that and they don't get rid of those distractions that they're using to not really see, um, that they come into a state, the colloquy state. And if they don't find their way out of it, no way to see, in their state, they're allowed to wallow in the underworld until something pushes them back up into life. And she argues that that state is, and I quote, a prelude to a crossing. On page 70, she says that this crossing, they're basically in that state, they're finding themselves and they're coming into um, a new identity where they may be refusing patriarchal society that they were once part of, one that made them feel less than. Uh, and she says on page, one second, sorry, this part was interesting. That she spent the first half of her life learning to rule myself, to grow a will, and now at midlife, I find that autonomy is a boulder on my path that I keep crashing into. I can't seem to stay out of my own way. I've always been aware that there is a greater power than the conscious I. The power is my inner self, the entity that is the sum total of all my reincarnations, the God woman in me. Ah, and then she goes on, when I bow down to her and when to allow the limited conscious mind to take over, that is the problem. That's all on page 72. Uh, that's interesting because I think a lot of people struggle with getting in their own way and allowing, their inner self to guide them. Uh, our conscious mind is always thinking about what are people going to say about us? What are we expected to do? Who are we expected to be? What will happen if we go for what we really want or who we really want to be, or we accept the culture that we once were? And I think this chapter really struck on those points and was very interesting in that way because I know that she's talking about Chicanos and mestizos, but I think everyone can relate to that. I I think that we can all see where we may have not went for something that we wanted to because we were worried about what would happen or what people would think. And she's just relating this to her inner goddess, Kolokwe, and who she believes is very real, and that's someone that she lets guide her, but she struggles with letting that goddess guide her at times and accepting herself for who she is and not worrying about others. Uh, that's basically it. I'm not sure if I understood it all or even got close, but I hope you enjoyed, and comment if you have any questions I might be able to answer or we can learn together. Thank you.